I'm skipping the on-camera intro and getting right into it to start vlog 128. I cruise into Peppermill on a Thursday afternoon, put my name on the list, and practice my OMC skills while I wait. I sit down on table 2 in a lousy lineup and immediately get on the move list. I did like the fact that Brett was dealing though.
Yes, you did, Brett!
First hand comes when I'm cruising down the street in my 6-4. Playing 5-handed, I decided to simply open under the gun to 10. The hijack is a super aggressive player, and he 3-bets to 45, and I make the call. So with 90 in, the flop is 3-5-9 with 2 spades. Open-ended straight draw and a flush draw, and I check. He bets 80, and I elect to check raise to 200. Now I am doing this with one primary goal in mind, and that is to get him off his ace-high hands. He's probably not folding a pair. This guy doesn't even fold his laundry. He thinks for a minute and calls. So with 490 in, the turn is one of the last cards I wanted to see. It's another 3. A great card for him if he's holding on with the pair, which I assume that he is. I check, and I told myself I'd consider the double check raise all-in bluff here, but he doesn't bet. The river comes a 10. I've missed everything, I'm disgusted, and I check. He checks back and wins with 8-9 of hearts. Then I thought I was rolling, but come to find out, you have to press record to capture video. Who knew? So I didn't get it, but I was able to recuperate those lost funds when my ace-king went up against ace-queen on an ace-high board, and I got 3 streets worth of value. Then I got my tables changed, and one VIP replaces another on my immediate right. This VIP doesn't play a ton, but there's no question that he's run better against me over the years than any other VIP. I go about an hour, folding basically every hand, and then we get an under-the-gun limp, and I have pocket deuces in the cutoff and make it 15. Button calls, limper calls. So with 50 in, it comes 8-3 deuce with 2 clubs. Check to me, and I come out and bet. I make it 40. The button folds, but the limper calls. Not a player that I know. Turn is an offsuit queen, and now he leads out for 60. I thought about smooth calling and trying to get a river bet out of him, but I figured this could be a blocker bet with a draw, so in that case I elect to raise it. I make it 160 more, and he snap folds. Then I get involved with the VIP, pick things up on the flop after I'd raised king-queen and he limp called. I check back a jack-9-7 flop, and the turn's a king. He bets 25, and I call. So with 95 in, the river is a 3, and he bets 40. I decide this is an opportunity for a thin value raise, which generally need to be very small to get paid off by weaker hands. So I make it 80, and he calls, giving us a $255 pot, and I win against king 10.
Pretty thin, huh?
Then we get a dealer sit down who I'd argue is one of the best if he didn't have this bizarre leak of scrambling the cards every single hand before putting them in the shuffle machine. Then I open 7-8 of clubs and get 3-bet by a VIP in the big blind to 75. Against Tim in position, I'm calling. So with 150 in, the flop comes jack 7-3 with 1 club. He bets 75. I'm concerned, but I'm going to have to see if I can pick up 2 pair or a backdoor flush draw here. So with 300 in, the turn is the king of hearts. Last thing I wanted to see, he bets 200. I fold, and he shows the skinny. So I get bluffed on that one, but I pick up pocket 3s on the button in a 4-way limped pot in the next hand, and limp in myself. So with 20 in, the flop is king-king-10 with 2 clubs. It gets checked to me, and I made kind of an ill-advised decision here to see if I can take down the pot with a half-pot size bet. Under the gun 2 calls. So with 40 in, the turn is a slightly above average card. It comes a 3, and he checks. Now naturally, I decide to go from betting half pot to betting full pot now that I have the full house. He calls. So with 120 in, the river is the 9 of clubs, and he checks. I decide to go from betting full pot to betting more than the pot. I make it 150, and he calls. So we have a $420 pot. I show my hand, and he mucks. Then my Serbian buddy Marco, who now lives in the Bay Area, sits down in the game.
Marco from Trbuja.
And if you're asking, did I just mention him because I wanted to play that clip? Yes. Yes, I did. I'm actually glad he didn't get more involved in this next hand than he did. I had pocket queens under the gun 2 and raised to 20. 5 callers. With the 100 in, the flop is about as good as I can ask for. 9-7 deuce rainbow. I bet 75. Marco calls in the low jack, and a VIP check calls in the big blind. So with 320 in, Turn comes a 9. He checks, and hating that card, I check as well. The low jack checks back, though, and the river is a king. Big blind checks here again, and I decide to try to squeeze $75 in thin value out of one of these two guys, but don't end up getting called by either. And that brings us to this hand. I raise 20 under the gun with king, queen of clubs and get 3 callers. With 80 in, the flop is jack of clubs, 10 of clubs, jack of spades. I debated how to play it, but I decided that I wanted to get some money in with my huge draw, but not too much in case anyone has a jack here. I bet 25. The low jack decides to call. So with 130 in, I was hoping for the ace of clubs for my first ever royal flush in 13 years of live poker. Instead, I'd have to settle for the 9 of clubs, giving me the king high straight flush. Obviously, now it's kind of a tricky spot in terms of bet sizing. You don't want to go too big, but you want to get money in there. I decided the best way to disguise what I have is to hide in plain sight. I decided to just make the most standard-looking bet I can think of. I make it 85, and he calls. So with 300 in, the river is the king of diamonds. Not sure if it's a good or a bad card for me, but I bet out for 300, and he starts to think about it. I figured he was contemplating a call with the jack in his hand, but I then hear 2 magic words. All in. That's an $1,100 bet. Obviously, I'm snap calling. I figured he had a full house. Instead, he says straight flush, showing 7-8 of clubs for the bottom end, resulting in a $2,400 pot and the bad beat jackpot being hit. At Peppermill, the bad beat jackpot is $5,000 in total. $2,500 to the bad beat, $1,250 to the guy who wins, and the other $1,250 split up between the other players in the game. I figured that was a good hand to end the vlog on, but given how good of an image I had, I decided to play for 4 more hours before ultimately winning a little more. And just before midnight, I pull the horseshoe out of my seat, rack up, and book the win. Alright, it is just after midnight, cashing out and booking the win. Definitely a memorable session. Sometimes the best way to win money in poker is just run really friggin' good. And even though I didn't really get any money in bad, that was obviously the case for me today. Straight flush over straight flush. Hard to imagine that would ever happen to me. It never had happened to me, and probably will never happen to me again. A local pro here was talking to me about this, and he said he had never even been at the table for a bad beat. And he's played several years longer than me, and certainly more hands during that time, considering he doesn't have a job. But he then pointed out that he has had himself like 9 royal flushes, and I've had 0. So it's kind of funny how things like that tilt in weird directions depending on who you are. Hey, if you haven't already, hit me up on Poker Bros. The action on there is great. My group is called High Society. Pretty much every serious poker player I know plays on Poker Bros. The action's great, and that's why. Use the link in the description below and use my referral code. Also, if you haven't already, do me a big favor and hit the like and subscribe buttons. It helps grow the channel a lot. Obviously, the channel's been growing anyway, and I appreciate those of you who have recently subscribed. Alright, checking in one final time on this vlog. By the way, you guys like the tie? 1980s vintage casino tie, courtesy of my dad, Jim Deach, back when he was a casino host years ago. So I was thinking that rather than just read a bunch of viewer questions like once every 10 vlogs, maybe I could just read 1, or maybe 2, at the end of most every vlog. Probably not every vlog, but I could just throw it in there as a quick thing at the end. And the question of the week this week is hilarious because the person that asked it didn't know what had happened this week when he asked it, because I hadn't posted anything. He was just watching the last vlog and asked the following question. BB writes in, Thoughts on tipping amount when you win a high hand or a bad beat? Does a dealer ever expect a massive tip? Well, I can't really speak to what would happen in some of these progressive bad beat jackpots that you'll see, but, you know, like the one at the Peppermill now is 5,000. And if you're the guy losing the hand, which I wasn't in this case, you get 2,500. And if you're the guy winning the hand, which I was, you get 1,250. So I'll just tell you what I did. In this particular case, I gave 25 bucks to the dealer, and it's not a dealer that I know. In this case, I tipped 25. I also tipped Reno, the floor, 25. She's amazing, by the way, as I'm sure everyone that is watching this that plays at Pep knows. So that was the case here. I felt I had to tip a little more than I would if I just won that money in a pot, considering you know, it was like a jackpot type deal. So that's my answer to the question of the week this week. Appreciate you guys who will submit those in the comments below or DM them to me on Instagram at BenDeach. That'll wrap things up. We'll see you back here from a casino where I've never vlogged before next time.